Great afternoon. Great afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Happy Winning Wednesday. Happy Wealthy Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning into the Legacy Lab. I am your host, Stephanie Miller Henderson, and I come to you every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time to share some important information, some important tools, some important tips around wealth building, legacy building, primarily in the Black community. Super excited to have you listening on today. Follow Intellectual Radio on YouTube. Then go on over and follow Stephanie Miller Henderson at the Black Legacy Lab on YouTube. You can also just listen to the podcast anywhere that you are able to listen to podcasts. But you can also head over to intellectualradio.com where you can catch the audio there, amongst so many other things. Shout out to Earl and Wanda for all that they do and for creating this space and giving voice to those of us that just simply have something to say. So, June is Men's Health Month. And just like last month, the month of May, as Mental Health Month, there was a focus on the intersectionality of money and mental health. And June is going to be no different. However, I do plan to have at least one good man to join me in the studio before this month is out. So keep your ears open for that. Definitely want to hear from the fellas. So if you are a Black man and you are listening and you have a business, you have an organization, and you have a focus on financial freedom or financial literacy for the community, definitely reach out. You can come on the show. You can call in as a guest or be present with me here to just share what you're doing, share more about your business, your organization, your initiative, what you're up to, and just kind of, share your thoughts and concerns, or your opinion, your facts on men's health. I have, let's see, I'm not going to be able to do that. If you are listening, especially to Carlton, because he just sent me a message and I don't think I'm gonna be able to pull from there and do that. But if you are listening and you want to call in, you can definitely call in and share your comments, your concerns at 708-823-8953. Again, that number is 708-8223. I'm sorry, 708-223-8953 to call in and share. So let me just give some clarity really quickly. When I talk about legacy, the legacy that I'm talking about here is not leaving good morals and values, although that is very important. We should be teaching those good morals and values daily. They should just be embedded, and we're reinforcing them daily with our children and within our families and in our community. But the legacy I'm talking about is not leaving your good last name. I mean, that some of these things are a given, right? Is not leaving, your worn hats and your clothing and your shoes and your jewelry or your memorabilia. But the legacy that I speak about is defined as this. It's the amount of money, 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 or property that is left to someone in a will. So legacy, the amount of money or property that is left to someone in a will, period. That is the legacy that I speak of. An investment in children that you will never, ever, ever even meet, but they are in your lineage. That is the legacy that I speak about. And that's powerful. Um, because guess what? Even if you have those good morals and values, which we hope, and that great last name and all those things, then what? How do you implement? How do you teach those things? How do you execute those things? It's going to take some money. It's going to take something, right? Financial to eventually do any and everything that we want to do in this world. And so this is a Proverbs 13:22 principle, which is the understanding that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That's what the word says. It's right there. I'm not making this up. So then I guess it, the thing that's there that we can also kind of say is then, so one who does not do this, what does that say? If it says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, so those that don't then are what? How do we classify them? So that's where we are. I wanted to make sure I just gave some clarity around legacy and what legacy actually means in on this platform. So again, if you are listening and you would like to call in, I keep saying this because I see some text messages coming through, and I'm not able to get to those right now. But the call-in number is 708-223-8953. If you want to call in, chime in around Men's Health Month, around money and mental health as it relates to Black men, definitely I would love to hear from you. So last week I had two ladies to join in. I talked about Mr. Donald Bradley, who is a Black man from Baltimore, documented multimillionaire who took his own money to build a company where now over 137,000 people in over 20 countries have been able to become 1099 independent reps on their way to 6 and 7 figure plus incomes, literally in a condensed time frame. It's truly divine. It's something that's happening, that's shaking and moving. It's something that you will, if you have not heard about, definitely hear about. Um, and so you'll be able to say, if you listening for the first time, you'll be able to say you heard it here on the Legacy Lab about this money movement and the embodiment of planet marketing, if you will. And so those two ladies that joined us last week, they are a part of this movement, this business entrepreneurship, home based opportunity movement. And I too am a part of that movement. And so I just felt like I would be remiss during this Men's Health Month and talking about money and mental health as it relates to Black men to not mention the man, the visionary leader himself, Mr. Donald Bradley. He's an intense gentleman, but he's on a mission. He is on a mission to help ordinary people to earn extraordinary income. Great afternoon, Tammy. I see you tuning in on Facebook. Hey there, my sister. Great afternoon. Please definitely comment, like, share. So here we are. I just want to keep up again along this topic of money and mental health, but putting it in the perspective and stating some facts and sharing some facts about Black men and money. Whew. Black men and money. Now, ladies, if you are listening, definitely, I want to hear from you. We have husbands, boyfriends, brothers, cousins, uncles, black men in our family. Um, what's the money talk? What is the money talk like? And do you notice, as it relates to mental health issues and concerns, what do you notice? What are you noticing in your brothers and your uncles and your cousins and your husbands? What are you seeing? And so, ladies, don't think that you are not included in the conversation. Definitely want to hear from you. Comment. Let me know your thoughts. It's really important. This topic of mental health has started to gain. I feel like a lot of traction post the pandemic because it was during this global time out, if you will, that God placed everyone on, that people were able to, that some issues were magnified during this time. I always say it's not that these issues never existed, it's just that the COVID-19 pandemic was like a microscope, if you will, a magnifying glass, where you were really able to see some things, even from people that you live with, that you may have overlooked. You really you were in the house, stuck in the house with people, and you were probably like, "Oh my, I never really noticed that." You really noticed some things. And so when it comes to mental health, I started to see more celebrities talking about it. I just remember vividly Taraji P. Henson's foundation, the Boris, and I may be not saying the name correctly. And I feel like the foundation was started because of a man, a black man, in her family as it relates to mental health. And she started this foundation. And during the pandemic, this foundation was giving free therapy sessions. And then, this whole movement of telehealth and teletherapy and dial this number to receive this assistance, it just blew up. And people who otherwise didn't even think that they had a mental health issue realized that they did. And so we all have to take care of our mental health, everyone, right? But then there are some people where it starts to become, I'm going to say, diagnosable, right? Where you start to notice certain things that may have started off as something small, and then it started to compound because of the issues of life, because of what's going on in society, what's going on, in our communities, what's going on in politics, if you will. And so money just seems to be the nucleus of these things many times. And I shared it jokingly, like, when you get paid, and like, when tax season, income tax season roll around, and you are getting a tax income return, and all these things, you just feel better. Seems like people feel better when they have money in their pocket, when they have money in the bank, when you have money on the way. You just feel better. That's what it seems to me, right? And I know I feel real good. But because I have a relationship with God, I feel good either way. That's a whole nother topic. Because I know that as long as I'm here, as long as I have time, I can make some more money. See, that's the thing. And that's why people uh seek wealth, is because it's not necessarily about the money, but it's about the time freedom. Because we don't know, how much time we have. We know how much money we have. We don't know how much time we have. So that's why that legacy piece becomes so important, because once you're gone, what are you leaving? Hey there, Deontay, Gen Zer from, is it Tennessee? Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Deontay, comment, like, share. Let me know your thoughts as it relates to Black men, money, and mental health. So, I want to get to some of the facts, right? We're gonna dig into some facts, and then we're gonna be done. First, the median wealth of Black households, and I believe this is a statistic that I've shared before. The median wealth of Black households is about 1/10 that of white households. So what that looks like is, let's say a white household makes 100,000, that's going to be 10,000 for a Black household. Um, but there is some added financial pressure on Black men who are often the first generational wealth builders in their family. And it comes from this way that we were taught or raised, where and my husband says this. He says it like this. He told me this and had never heard it ever. And I dated and was married and didn't hear it. He said that a man is supposed to promote, protect, and provide. Promote, protect, provide. So we go back and forth sometimes about that providing, because some people may feel like providing, well, let me not say some people's. I can see this, where providing um can come in different forms, if you will. That providing is not always financial. Now, me on the other hand, I'm going to say that it may not always be financial. You could provide in other ways. But I'm going to say, and this is me, that is 90% provided, because again, it goes back to this premise, if you will, that if you want to say I provided food, how did you provide that food? If you want to say I provided shelter, how did you provide that shelter? If you want to say I provided transportation to, from, whatever, I gave a car, maybe I drive people, my family, whatever. Whatever your providing is going to go back to the money. So if you don't have the money, then how are you providing? And if you have something to say, come on, call in and say it, 708-223-8953, because I would like to hear of these different ways to provide. But that's the premise, right? It's like men, especially, because they feel like, if I'm not providing, then am I less of a man? If I'm not able to do X, Y, and Z for my family, for my household, you know, first, before we even go to like our community, um, it starts at home first. So are men feeling pressured and pressed? Like, if I'm not able to do these things, then am I a man? Am I providing? I'm not able to provide, so am I a man? Is my manhood being challenged because of that? And this is why I need the men to call in and talk to me and let me know what's going on. Look like we got somebody calling in to talk to me. Let's see. Let's see who we have. Great, great afternoon. Great afternoon. Thank you so much for calling into the Legacy Lab. Who do I have on the line with me? Looks like they may have
Hello?
lost. Oh, great, great. All right, it was a little delay. Thank you so much, Wanda. Who do I have on the line?
I can't. Hello?
It sounds like Carlton. Carlton, is that you, sir?
Can you hear me?
Carlton, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I'm sorry.
Awesome, awesome. No worries, no worries. Thank you so much. You must have been tuning in via YouTube or via Facebook, because you got the call in number.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, Carlton Henderson is my husband that I was just talking about, with these three words of promote, provide, and protect. Carlton, I'm glad you were able to call in. Um, the Do you have something to weigh in as it relates to this topic that I'm throwing out there? Black men and money and mental health. Um, and I didn't get into a lot of the facts that I was going to throw out, but I'm going to share one while I have you on and let you weigh in on this. So I'm going to stick with mental health. Black men experience similar rates of mental health as other groups, right? But as far as the diagnosis or the treatment, that's less likely. I had a statistic that I found from National Alliance on Mental Health, or NAMI. Many of you may have heard of them. Only 26% of Black men who need mental health care receive it. Now, we know that there's some stigma around men and mental health in general. Like, men are often told that they can't cry, um, toughen up, don't be a girl, all these things, and that they have to maintain like this unrealistic level of toughness, suppressing their emotions and suppressing like this untreated trauma. And so when it comes to money and mental health, if when the same things that I lifted up last month applies even to men, like the increased stress level, the depression, the suicidal ideations, all related to this lack of money in which ties to your ability to be able to do some of the things that I said, right? Promote, protect, provide. And so, Carlton, you and I were talking about this clip recently. This clip where Tyrese was on, I believe it was Charlemagne the God show, the Breakfast Club, or that show. I believe it was that show. And I don't remember what Tyrese was addressing, but he was crying. He was crying, and he I think Charlemagne said something, and Tyrese was like, "No, I'm gonna let the tears." Like, he was like, "I'm gonna let it flow. I'm a cry." And he was talking about something that he was dealing with. But that clip went viral. Of course, it's Tyrese, and there was, some back and forth about it. But I'm gonna just open it up because I really want to hear your thoughts about Black men, money, and mental health. And you could share your thoughts even about that Tyrese clip. But what are you thinking as it relates to this money and mental health for Black men?
Um, it could be a burden. It can be a thing that most Black men don't talk about, especially sometimes to their wives. Sometimes they'll go to outside and talk to a good friend of theirs, or sometimes they just deal with it with themselves. But it is a struggle. It's a struggle because we are our we are responsible for taking care of the home. We do feel that way. We feel that money is real. Like in this society, money is the center of everything. Happiness, joy, all those things. And just like you said, 90% of it to a woman, that is. I'm not saying all women. I'm redressing it to some women who do feel that 90% of money does do those things. But as a man who is spiritual like me, I have been homeless. I have lost everything. I have been through a lot. Been through a lot. Trying to provide kids, own child support, all those things that come into play. Taking care, doing so many things, working 2 or 3 jobs, doing those things. But when you have a relationship with God and God put things in perspective, that God is going to provide whatever you need. A lot of Black men suffer, and that's why to be honest, a lot of our mental health does come from not being able to provide for our families because we're so deadbeat dad. You're not a good husband. You can't take care of this. A lot of that stress comes out, and not to be able to feel like we can reach out to even friends. Even going to church, we feel like we can't even reach out to the ministers because they're so busy, or to the people in the church. People gossip a lot. So men kind of seclude and isolate themselves and feel like they have to always be the problem solver, always doing these things. And men basically, I think men and women communicate different than women. And a lot of times men don't communicate verbally. We kind of just go through the motions. We feel that we have to be the listener most of the times, even though we're tired. And we do listen to our children when they're going through the things. We listen to our wives. And I'm talking about black men. I don't know what goes in other cultures, but I know mostly black men. Those black men out here that only make like $45,000 to $50,000 a year. Most of them might work 2 and 3 jobs to take care of the household. Come home, got to do the best that they can. You know, not being able to do the activities that they would like to do, even though they're working all these jobs. And I'm speaking for myself in this area too. But when we talk about, and I'm gonna go with the 3 P's. When we talk about providing, we're not only talking about money. We're talking about spirituality. We're talking about taking care of our family spiritually. Money is like this thing that we chase so much, we lose perspective of who we are as human beings. And so when we have it spiritually, because this right here has taught me being having a relationship with God. I look at Jesus. I look at Malcolm X. I look at Martin Luther King. I look at Frederick Douglass, W. Du Bois. I look at all these famous people, but they weren't rich, but their spirituality was rich, and God still provided for them because their purpose, and they provided for their families. They provided for their families. They struggled, but it was a spirituality thing that they knew that they had faith in God, that God will provide for them because they're followers of God. And when we are followers of God, He will be the provider not only for us, but for our families. And so I have learned that because I just experienced this. I went to Washington, D.C. I didn't have to pay a dime for anything. That was God providing. It wasn't $1 million. It wasn't I'm not rich, but God provided for that trip. And so when a man can relate and say, you know what, I'm going to be obedient to God. I'm going to trust in God, because when I trust in Him, He will provide. He's going to provide. And yes, there's going to be some struggles, but God is always, it's not the money that's 90%. It's God who's the 100% that's going to provide. And that's where, and provide, promote the protection is through God, that He gives the man of the household to protect his family. All this is through God. All this is through God. The promotion is to make sure that your wife is beautiful. You tell her how beautiful she is. You rub her feet even though you tired. You comfort her even though you don't feel like it, but you do it anyway. You listen to her when she's going through those things. These are what a good man or a good husband does. And we don't even really tell you how we really feel. Because our basic job is to provide, protect, and promote our families, and put our own feelings, our own thoughts to the side, so we can make sure our family has all three of those pieces.
So let
So
me
you,
let me chime in really quickly. I want to
mhm.
cuz you're saying a lot. Um and ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see how Carlton and I have somewhat of a a differing perspective sometimes, and that's fine, right? Men and women, husbands, wives, we are not going to always can agree, will agree. But one thing that we do agree on is that God is the provider. God, and I've said this plenty of times. God is the CEO of my life. But the reason why I shifted into this whole wealth building mission is because I serve an abundant God. And so I started to realize that poverty is man-made. I started to realize that a lot of the things that I see in my community, in the Black community, it has a lot to do with our mindsets. Of course, we have the systemic racism and trauma, right? And that's something that I was going to touch a little bit on today. But now that I have Carlton here, calling in, I'm going to, have a little bit of a conversation with him, because he is actually going to join me in the studio before the month is out. And I'm going to talk to him about some of the things he's working on. But I, you know, I want to stay to this mental health piece. I just bought up the 3 Ps, my love, because I think that that's fabulous. I think that that's a good, like, those are some good pillars for men to try to strive for as it relates to how they cover their families. Am I promoting not just my wife, but my children and people in my family? Am I promoting them? Am I providing? And am I protecting them? So I thought that that was great, but I don't want to veer too far off from this Black men, money, and mental health. From the fact that it says 66% of Black Americans say they worry about money. Now, I'm all for everything that was said, and I absolutely adore, and I love, and you and I both love Black history. Um and we talk a lot about, our struggles and our history as it relates to, being from Africa to America, like how I kind of gave the topic. But we have to let's get back to the money, because that's what this show is. It's the Legacy Lab. It's talking about Black financial freedom, Black wealth, Black legacy, not just the legacy of education and the struggle and the things that we fought for. Um, because I'm not able to poll Dr. King and Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was not poor. He was not poor, because the people he would you people that were able to get a seat at these tables, they had a certain status about themselves. They were either their educational status brought that along with them, but they were not the poor Black people or poor people of the African diaspora. So let's get back to the money and the mental health. 66% of Black Americans say they worry about money most or all of the time. And this statistic is coming from Pew Research. I don't just pull stuff up out of the air. I'm a data person, and Carlton knows that. I'm like, stick to the facts, stick to the facts. Um, but with Black men often bearing this expectation of being providers without the generational support. What I mean by that is, you and I talk about this, Carlton, about homes that should have been left in our family, right? That's a wealth tool. Home ownership is a wealth tool, wealth building tool. So when we let those things go in our family, it's not passed down to the next generation, right? That's one thing. So now you're either a renter all of your life and you're struggling, you don't have that ability to build equity, that comes with home ownership, different things like that. But 66% is a large number, and say they worry most or all of the time. And see, Carlton, I feel like that's the thing we don't address a lot of times in our family, especially as men. I don't know that men confide in, their girlfriends or their spouses or their children when that part comes. It's like, okay, as a man, I need to figure it out. I need to do it by myself. And I think that's where that mental health piece comes, because you all maybe internalize it or feel like, because I'm a man, I can't go and seek out help here or help there because maybe I'll be looked at as less of a man. What are you seeing and hearing on the forefront as it relates to that piece? Because the data, the numbers speak for itself, is there, and it's something that men worry about, that Black men worry about.
I mean, you said 66% of Black Americans or Black men worry about money, or just Black men and women?
Black Americans. I mean, if I had to, I can't break the statistic down for gender, but I mean, I could we could I mean, our own we could look at our own household and our own family as it relates to, our struggles or our journeys, or what we share, what we discuss, what mental health issues and concerns we see because of like not having or not being able to provide, and what we see when we step out of our homes and drive down the street and in our community. And so what are your thoughts about that? Like, is that something you feel you could relate to, or that other men in your life, thinking about the conversations that you have, is there a worry and a concern about financial well-being, financial wellness?
You know what? The gentleman that I hang with, I have a good friend named Smiley. He's always talking about finances. He's a brilliant guy in finances. Me and him always have discussed. He worked in banks, BMO managers, district managers, and all of that. And what I find is that even if a man makes $200,000, he's still gonna worry about money. He's still gonna worry about money, because one thing is that in our society today, sometimes we feel that we gotta be better and keep being better and keep making more money. It's a never money can make you want more. The more you worry about not having what you want, the more money that you want. Um, Money is a tool. Um, is to me is something that will help you sustain what you need to do to be elevated in life. As Black men, it is difficult, to be in those categories, because even our mental health doesn't always coincide with money. It doesn't always coincide with money. Our mental health, we got multi-millionaire Black men who are struggling right now. It's a different level of struggle. They can't. Kyrie Irving, they talked about him when he talked about Black people, or if we say something wrong, that's a penalty. That you get your job taken away. They take all your money. You blackball. Black men go through struggles. It's certain things that we are not allowed to do. We are not allowed to do. So we have to maintain a certain standard, a certain way of doing things. That's our mental health issue. It's not always money. It's dealing with society itself. It's when we go out there and we look for a job and they tell us we're overqualified or we're not qualified. We have black men out here with master's degrees working in the field that they didn't even go to school for. We have black men, they took all the trading schools from our communities because this was keeping us moving as black men, welders, electricians, plumbers. It's not always the money. It's maintaining. It's to make sure that we have to be on the straight level. We got to work extra hard than our counterparts. It's certain things we can't do. It's that mental health is when we see a police siren behind our backs, that blue light comes on, we just freeze up. Those are the things, is when we walk out the house, are we coming back? I think about that every day. I work in Argyle Guards. I think about getting shot almost every day. Those are the things that black men go through. And I wish money could keep us from having those type of thoughts. And when we drive down in our Lexus, the police gonna stop us and ask us, how do we get that car while we're in the neighborhood? It's a lot more than just worrying about money. Sometimes money is not even on our top. It's not even in our concept. It's deeper than that. It's a little deeper than that. And not to be able to articulate how we really feel without shedding a tear. Without shedding a tear. We don't even want our wives or children to see our pain. Because our job is to make sure that you are happy, that you're joyful, that we are able to sustain you, that we can give you the things that you need, but not always the things that you need, but what you want also.
That's good. You're talking about you brought up something that has to do with racism and trauma, and that's specifically aligned to that mental health piece. Now, that financial stress, that statistic, that data is what it is. I don't, it is what it is. They say people worry about it. Um, but that's not to say that they don't worry about the other things. Which you're talking, the exposure to systemic racism, policing, job discrimination, economic instability, all of these things increase the risk of depression, anxiety. These are all things that was lifted up last month. Again, talking about money and mental health. I had Dr. Hughes call in and talk about what she sees. So we're not the focus is not that it's about money, but it becomes about money. Money is like this, and that's what that's really the whole premise of this podcast. Like, I want people to see that it is a tool that God gives us, but it depends on whose hands it's in, right? That's the thing. Um, it's not that it can buy you joy. That's a spiritual thing. But when it comes to systemic racism, if you will, like this increase of depression and anxiety and PTSD in black men, if the money was in the right hands, and when we start to think about legislation, right, then we would not have the closing of programs or taking away of resources and support that can help black men to deal with these things, right? Last week I shared, yeah, that was last week. I shared, no, that wasn't last week. I'm thinking about something else. My mind is going to something I think that I wrote an article. But I came across some resources specifically for black men, support groups, therapy sessions, specifically for black men. I believe that one of them was called like the man cave. And I thought that was so dope, because why wouldn't you call it the man cave? Like that's awesome. And so, but all of that takes money, right? And so that's what I mean, Carlton. I don't want you to think that this is some like superficial show or talk that's like saying that money is the focus. It's not. And I always go back to this. I say money isn't everything, because it's not, but it takes money to take care of the people that mean everything. And that's what I need the listeners to know and understand, because as Black people, we, when we think about the Tulsas and the other community, we speak a lot about Tulsa because that's the community that has gotten most popular, as people started to learn about Tulsa, Oklahoma riots. But that's not there are other stories out there where we had the Black banks and the Black educational programs and all the businesses, and they were thriving. All this is money related, but then because of systemic racism that comes along, and then you are purposely kept out of certain things, so much so to the point of death, like where people will try to will kill you because of this, right? This being able to elevate. And so that alone, and I think that's you made a good point. You said that you have wealthy people, or at least not wealthy, but people that are making six figures that are not, in a good space mentally. And that's because, it's not enough to just make it. You got to maintain it, and you got to, still live in this world that is constantly telling you that you can't have it, you shouldn't have it, you don't deserve it, you're not enough. You're always battling these things. I like to say it's hard to be poor and it's hard to be rich. I'm sure, but it's like choose your heart, right? Which heart are you going to choose? Um and so I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. And again, Carlton is actually going to join me in studio in a couple of weeks, where he is going to share more about Ocean Week, right? That's what you talked about when the Washington
Yes.
D.C. trip, more about Ocean Week,
Mm-hmm.
and more about his organization that he is building, and looking, for definitely looking for partnership, volunteers, people that care about the mission, but it's urban awareness for marine conservation. Black people do swim. That should be just the logo, the slogan, crowd. Black people do swim. Carlton, I thank you so much for calling in. You had one last point that you wanted
Yeah,
to share.
yeah, I'm gonna make it quick. Du Bois talk about the talent intent
Mm-hmm.
that will take care of our society. We had the talent intent in those places called Tulsa and Rosewood and those major people. This society, not only here in America but in Africa, they take our elite, our educators, our financial geniuses, and they have destroyed them. So when you have a group of people that have been brutalized, not only physically but mentally and spiritually, and you have no way of getting help mentally or spiritually. I mean, the thing is, we say, why can't we get all these millionaires now and this thing? Their integration was to be our desegregation, to separate us. So now they were
Ooh, you might have to
geniuses
say
to
that
integrate
again.
us so we can be separated.
My.
The devil is a genius. So we thought we were going to get integrated, but we was integrated with the enemy, and now we're separated from ourselves. So how can you have a legacy? I love my wife. My wife is a powerful mover. She is a worker, but our people cannot restore a legacy when the foundations keep getting cracked and burned. In these situations, we have brilliant people out there, but they're scared of losing. They're scared of things that they work so hard for to get taken away that they don't speak up. And now we're without leaders, without bold leaders to stand up and say, hey, we're going to make this movement. Every movement we have, they have distorted. Hip hop used to be so positive. Now look what we're talking about: drugs, women, sex, fighting, and all it is. And our people love music, and they know music. is one of the things that motivates us. Music is the thing that makes movement. The civil rights movement had music, song. So all I'm saying is that we have more millionaires now, and we have a lot more ignorant and black people than we have almost than we had slavery.
Wow. You said
So
you said their integration, because I'm a quote person. I'm a quote this. Their their integration was our
segregation.
segregation. That's powerful. And I'm gonna let that sit and sink in. That's very powerful. So, Carlton, I'm gonna say thank you so much for being a very
Uh,
valued caller. Like, I appreciate you.
I love you, wifey.
I love you too.
Yeah.
See,
All right.
thank
All right.
you. Wow. I don't even know what to say after that part. Their integration was our segregation. And what that boils down to is the more things change, the more they stay the same. Yes, we have more black millionaires. I believe black women are the most educated um, as it relates to education, master's degrees, doctoral degrees. We have more mental health resources, but still here I am talking about these big percentages as it relates to mental health issues. June is Men's Health Month. So I'm going to say it again, men, if you are listening and you have a business or organization or anything and you want to come on the Legacy Lab, I would love to have you call in or join me in the studio. But let me end by saying this. As I stated during the month of May, money and mental health are inseparable. And again, it's not about money as like, oh, let me accumulate all of this wealth to just be wealthy. No, it's the fact that money is a tool to build, to restore, to restructure, to shape. So, we see it being used for good and we see it being used for evil. So that's where the spiritual part comes in, because if you have a relationship with God, then we're talking about biblical principles and character there. So the way that you use that tool is going to be powerful, and it's going to be helping the least of these, right? Because we know that everybody's not going to do it. If it was easy to be rich, to be wealthy, to leave a legacy, everybody would do it. But it takes work. It takes a mindset shift first. And people do not want to be transformed in their mind. That's the hard part. Some people don't even believe they deserve it. So that's a whole nother thing. So you'll never have everybody everywhere doing everything at the same time. It's just not going to happen. But let us understand that the more of us that have decided and made that position, then it's up to us now to be good stewards over what God has blessed us with, and to use that wealth and those resources to do some things. And so that is what I am on. My husband knows that I am on a mission to get with like-minded black people who want to build, who want to build wealth, who want to go after the legacy. And seriously to do it. You know what I mean? And that's what this is. But money and mental health are inseparable. And so for black men, this pressure to succeed financially is there. They may not talk about it with us ladies, or the children, because again, it goes back to that stigma of like, if I say this, then I'm gonna appear weak. They may not even talk about it to their friends. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But they're dealing with this while battling invisible mental wounds. And so it becomes extremely overwhelming, and I'm going to say deadly, because I, as a counselor, saw an increase in suicidal ideations just among the older students that I worked with. So I know, that these statistics that I see, that there is an increase, that there is some truth to that. So how do we help one another heal, people? Because I want to give you the stats and I want to tell you what it is, but I also want to leave you with solutions. But platforms like this, so like, follow, share, join me. Don't just listen, but join me as, a thought partner. Share some things, educate the people. We as a people definitely need to, keep our ears and eyes open to what's happening, and to be lifelong learners. But platforms like this, and providing access to resources, of course, and opportunities, like the one that I mentioned, earlier, when I talk about Planet Marketing and Mr. Donald Bradley. This isn't just like a plug, but these are real opportunities out here that people don't know exist. And they're open, and they're accessible to the everyday man and woman. And so that's important. So resources, opportunity, and support. And that's going to create mental peace and purpose. So thank you all for tuning in, listening into the Legacy Lab. I appreciate you. I adore you. And I'll be back soon with more information as it relates to building Black wealth and legacy. Thank you so much. Be blessed.